As Iraq shows more signs of sectarian divide, faith leaders in London have come together to show unity among Britain's diverse religions.
Indeed, living the life, Sadia Chaudhry was in Westminster earlier today as the Archbishop of Canterbury joined others to lead the vigil.
We must stand against all culture of impunity, all culture of colluding with violence, and we must remember that we are all human.
It's no longer rare to find the Archbishop of Canterbury mingling with Muslim and Jewish leaders. These are familiar faces in terms of religious leadership in Britain, and it's a sign of peace when a gathering like this will fail to make headlines. The focus today is on Iraq, a nation increasingly unstable, dangerously violent and unpredictably divided. You see, Iraq's civil unrest is increasingly being described as sectarian. The fight has seen both Shia and Sunni groups target each other. Caught in the middle are civilians and places of worship. Rights groups have labelled some of the atrocities as ethnic cleansing and called on the world to do more to protect ethnic and religious minorities. Zakho town in Iraq's Kurdish north is one of several places where families who fled their homes have taken shelter. Sivo escaped to the Sinjar mountains, only to be chased by fighters there. He arrived in Zakho with his wife and 10 children after an arduous journey.
We escaped to the mountain, but they kept following us. We stayed 7 days on the mountain. There were no food, no water, nothing. My son carried me all the way. Step by step, we climbed the mountain and he carried me.
Today in Westminster, Britain's religious leaders called for the world to look beyond faith lines and help people like Sivo.
So the universal message is very, very clear. We are all human. And that is the message of the Quran. Allah tells us that He has made us into different kinds of people, different colors and nations and tribes, even different religions. But at the end of all that, we are all human beings. And God has given honor to this human being, this family of His, which is humanity.
Let's take London as a healthy microcosm. Thank God that you see people of all faiths and none, and colours and none, together, living together. It's a wonderful example of how it can happen.
Over 1,400 people were killed in Iraq last month alone, as sectarian violence rages in the centre and north of the country. About the same number of people are injured, and rival factions continue to vie over territory. The United Nations estimates that there are now more than 850,000 displaced people in Iraq's Kurdistan region, many of them in Dohuk Governorate, where Zakho is located. And most of them, such as Sivo's family, are in dire need of aid. Across the world, countless prayers are taking place for the victims of Iraq's civil war. Here in London, that prayer is this public vigil, aimed at showing the world that Britain's faith communities are very much united.
Well, that's brilliant. It's really good to see so many faiths coming together on such an important project. And yeah, it was brilliant that people came together.
Especially with what's happening in the globe at this moment in time. To have all the faiths come together is fantastic. Now, the event we just saw there was very much a multi-faith initiative. And joining us now are 3 people who represent each of the 3 Abrahamic faiths. Good evening, Dion, Richard and Zia. Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome. Good evening, guys. Richard, if I can start with you, if that's okay. It's wonderful, really, that 3 faiths, or several faiths, really came together to kind of talk about this issue, which is very much at light at the moment.
Absolutely. We were delighted by the response today. Not just the numbers, particularly on a busy Wednesday morning, who took some time out of their busy day to come and share moments of reflection, but also the diversity, Christian, Jewish, Muslim leaders and others, all standing up to say what's going on in Iraq is not in our name. We're all human. What's being done in the name of religion is not what we stand for.
Absolutely. It's very sad to see what's happening in Iraq at the moment. I suppose all the more important that we do come together to show a bit of unity, certainly from the West and in the UK.
Absolutely. I think part of the goal today was to stand in solidarity with all people of faith and those of none, but also to say that as humanitarian agencies, this is a principle in which we kind of deliver our work by, but also in which we live and work by. Definitely.
Now, Zia, you were also at this event today, this morning. Now, I understand the Archbishop was speaking there as well. To have someone of that magnitude speak at this kind of event, it tells you a little bit more about the, it says a huge amount about the initiative, doesn't it?
Yeah, the Archbishop was actually only in London for a few hours today. He was travelling from, I think, South America, and he was going to leave again. And within the few hours that he was in London, he made time to come to this vigil, which goes to show how important it was on his agenda. And I think with everything that's going on in Iraq at the moment, and with all the focus on the military and political side of things, I think it was really important that we actually got everybody's attention, even if it was for a short time, on the humanitarian side of what's actually happening in Iraq and the human side of the impact that it's having on lives in Iraq. And that's what was really important about today's event.
Now, obviously, you were recently in Iraq. You just came back a few weeks ago. What did you see when you went there? And it must have been a really hard-hitting kind of experience that you went through.
Yeah, I mean, well, I actually got back last week, and it was. I was just saying earlier at the event as well. It was nerve-wracking, but it was humbling at the same time, because I landed in Erbil, which is the capital of Kurdistan, which is relatively safe. It's under Kurdish rule and protected by the Peshmerga, which everybody seems to be aware of now. But the journey that we went on to get to the people who had been displaced, especially the Christian and the Yazidi minorities, that actually was, the road was running parallel to where the fighting was going on. So that was kind of quite nerve-wracking in itself. But all that was forgotten when we actually got to where we were going, which was, it's a region in the northwest called Dahuk, which is now housing a lot of these internally displaced people. And there was over 800 people who'd gathered at this incomplete construction site, which was going to be a school. But halfway through the construction, these families turned up. They had nowhere to live. They had nowhere to stay. The host families couldn't accommodate that many people. So they just took refuge in this shell of a building. And when I say shell, I mean it's just concrete, bare concrete. There was nothing there. They were sleeping on the concrete floor. They had nothing to eat, nothing to drink. And what was really kind of scary was when we got there. I mean, we took a convoy, a truck with us full of aid for the 800 people that were there, with water, with food, and with basic utensils, bedding, and hygiene kits and things like this. But some of the mothers that were there with their children in their arms were saying, had you not come today, we wouldn't know how we would have fed our children. And that's the scary thing. It's like, there are people out there who are depending on organisations like ours to actually respond and help those people who are in...
Most definitely. And it's such a powerful thing, really, when the three faiths are represented, especially at events like today's vigil. And to come back to that, I mean, Richard, if I can ask you, right, it sends such a strong message. It's such an important thing as well at a time like this, where Muslim, Jewish, Christian, and other faith leaders can stand together and take a stand. What do we need to do to make this happen more often?
I think that's the right question. Something I was reflecting on this morning is that at university I was quite involved with interfaith work, and that would involve a group of people from different traditions coming round a table and enjoying a shared love of hummus. And that's great, because hummus is very tasty.
Did you like a bit of hummus? Yeah.
Any food.
But the challenge is, how do you then take into a much more meaningful event with purpose? University is the right time to start challenging those relationships, making new friendships. What we did today was say, we're coming together. Sure, we're all human, and sure, many of our faiths have a lot in common, but actually true leadership, true interfaith work is about taking bold and complex decisions. So we need to look forward to the next time where we're all going to stand together for a similar issue.
And Dion, what stood out for you today? What did you take from today's event?
I think actually that it was a very powerful image. A friend this afternoon at work said, if you start off a sentence with, a rabbi, an imam, a church leader, and an ayatollah, it sounds like it's going to be
making of a good joke, really.
Yeah, a punchline. But actually, that was a powerful image of those leaders standing together, in solidarity with a unicorn message. And I think, which is absolutely right. Part of it is, how do we have these conversations more often? What brings us around a common table? And if we have this shared thing called humanity, we have more reason than not to have that conversation. So the quality of the relationship, well, if we don't invest in it, we won't get it. So we need to do more.
We most certainly do. Well, Razia, Richard, Dion, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to move on to our next...